to The Hypnotist, the show that gives you inside access to cutting-edge hypnosis with real clients facing genuine issues. Brought to you by the hypnotherapist demanded by celebrities, CEOs, and even royalty, Adam Cox. These recordings took place live from Adam's clinic in London's world-famous Harley Street. So, get yourself comfortable and enjoy today's episode of The Hypnotist.
Hi, it's Adam here, and in this hypnosis session, it is all about reducing alcohol at the identity level. And I was working with a client that really was becoming a bit too dependent on alcohol. They were drinking most weeknights. They felt that it was a way to wind down after work. If they were in a pub, a bar, or a restaurant, they would always have alcohol with their food, or if they're socializing. And to use their words, they would drink one more than they should. It wasn't that they were getting absolutely wasted. It wasn't that they were having nightmare hangovers, but consistently they were drinking more than they wanted to. And they felt it was taking away their edge. It was blunting their ability to kind of think quickly, to solve problems, to help them in their work. And what this hypnosis session does, it does two key things. It uses this idea of two different timelines. So if you're familiar with a movie from the 1990s called Sliding Doors with Gwyneth Paltrow, the whole premise of that movie is that she's about to catch a tube on the London Underground, and in one timeline she does, and in another timeline she doesn't. And you see two different timelines in this movie. Not a great movie, but a great concept. And that's effectively the concept of this. They get to see two different timelines with two different identities. An identity of being dependent on alcohol. And the most empowering alternative identity wasn't teetotal for this particular client. It was to be an occasional drinker. And what I like about that is it means it has the connotation of infrequency, that they're not drinking very often. But also the word occasion means you might drink at an occasion. So if you feel that you're drinking too much and you want to reduce the amount that you drink at the identity level, you might get some real value from this session. So I'd encourage you to find a quiet, comfortable place, the kind of place where you're not going to be distracted or disturbed. Relax and enjoy the session. Take a deep breath in. And as you breathe in that resourceful feeling of calm and relaxation. And as you exhale, feel that wonderful feeling of release. As if any tension, stress, and worries starting to leave your body in that outward breath. Breathing in relaxation and exhaling tension. The deeper you breathe, the more relaxed you feel. And the more relaxed you feel, the deeper you breathe. As your body relaxes, your imagination awakens. And I want you to imagine floating up outside of your body, keeping your physical body where it is, and allowing your imagination to float backwards. And I want you to observe, like an invisible observer, the very first time you tried alcohol. Maybe a child, a teenager, adolescent. And maybe it was an unpleasant taste. Maybe it felt to that version of you a sign of growing up, maturity. I want you to get a feeling of observing and understanding those early connotations. And maybe to begin with, it was just the occasional drink every now and then. Move forward in the timeline and see where it became more frequent. College, university. I want you to get a sense of when did it change to become more frequent? What were the implied pressures or expectations on you back then? I want you to get a sense that none of this is by accident. And as you observe, I want you to get a sense of how strong the expectation was that you would drink. Friends, people you were living with, family members. Follow the timeline until it became less of a choice and more of a habit, a routine. That it was the default thing that you did. And when you can see that, let me know by nodding your head. That's it. And I want you to take that timeline even further. Because originally it would have been linked to real times of moments of social connection. But something would have changed where what was reserved for occasions became something that felt necessary. Observe the time in your life where it felt it had become a dependency. That doesn't mean you were addicted. Doesn't mean you couldn't have lived without it. Most people are dependent on shoes. They're not addicted to shoes, but life would be difficult without them. And I want you to get a sense of observing when behavior turned to dependency. And that doesn't mean excessive amounts. It could just be the extra drink, more than you would have wanted with hindsight. Drinking on the weekday, even if there's very little upside. Because the nature of alcohol is that the body adapts. The body habituates. It takes more alcohol to give you less of a feeling. And that adaptation means that when you were a teenager, 2 or 3 drinks could make you feel tipsy or drunk. But in more recent times, 2 or 3 drinks can make you feel nothing at all. It barely registers on your scale of affecting your feeling, sensation, of feeling anything. And that's why some people end up slowly but surely drinking more and more, because it feels like it's necessary to give that feeling that was once felt. And I want you to see that there's certain environments that you would be more likely to drink. Maybe a pub, a bar, or a restaurant. Perhaps your own kitchen or front room. I want you to get a sense that it's these environments that are the perfect opportunity to create a new default. a new standard, a new normality. I want you to observe yourself at your current age and see that the recent trajectory has been that of dependency. And let's imagine a sliding doors moment. That timeline creates a fork in the road. One timeline becomes two. In a moment, they diverge. And I want you to imagine, in one timeline, it just continues in exactly the way that it has been going. Not drinking because you love it, you need it, but just because you keep doing what you have been doing. And maybe in that timeline, see that there's no real upside, but there is a downside. And in that downside, that sharp edge you used to have is becoming blunt. Somehow it's impeding your motivation, diffusing your focus, stealing your time and your energy. Blurring your clarity. And I want you to get a sense that you have full agency, full autonomy. If that is the future you desire, nothing at all can stop you. But I want you to consider the other timeline. A timeline of optionality. A timeline where you infrequently drink. And when you do drink, you're very discerning about where, with whom, and how much. And I want you to imagine picturing someone that you know that has a wonderful social life, is fun, is friendly, and doesn't drink at all. And imagine there was a point in their past where they could have chosen to be dependent and reliant on drink, but followed a different path. And I want you to get a sense, an assessment, that knowing what they now know, how much fun they can have, how social they can be without needing alcohol, would they ever go back and choose it? I want you to feel that having the option to drink but choosing not to can feel empowering, like a superpower, like an edge. So imagine observing that timeline, the version of you that steps into a new identity instead of someone that's dependent. I want you to see that version of you as an occasional drinker. And that occasional drinker means that you occasionally drink, but don't need to. And because you're an occasional drinker, when you do drink, more often than not, it's at an occasion. Sitting and watching TV isn't an occasion. A Thursday night isn't an occasion. I want you to see that in this timeline, when you do drink, it tends to be either a Friday or Saturday evening with other people, perhaps for a good reason. And even then, it's just an option and not an obligation. And I want you to imagine following the two different timelines and see where they take you 1 year from now. See the version of you that this next 12 months is very similar to the previous 12 months. Maybe there's more hangovers, maybe more mistakes. Maybe there's other things that happen in that first timeline. But I want you to imagine in that second timeline where you're the occasional drinker, you see qualities in you that you recognize in that person that doesn't drink. You don't need it, you don't want it. You just have the option to drink if you choose to. Maybe see that version of you has unexpected benefits. Maybe you're looking leaner, fitter. Maybe your skin is glowing or there's a sparkle in your eyes. Maybe in that timeline, you're being noticed within your organization. Maybe it leads to a promotion or something else. Opportunities are coming your way. And it's not like you're not drinking at all. It's just that in this new timeline, maybe it's been reduced to between 10 and 20% of what it was the year before, not through willpower and not through struggle, not through discipline, but through discernment. In that timeline, you choose when you drink, with whom you drink, and how much you drink. And I want you to step into that identity of being the occasional drinker. Feel like you're in a first person now. And imagine the next 12 months condensed to key moments. You're in a pub or a bar, but you choose something non-alcoholic. You're in a restaurant and you have a soft drink with your meal. I want you to notice those times that even when it's a Friday or a Saturday, of course you can drink, but even then sometimes you choose not to. Because this version of you is keeping your boundaries clear. Your defense is strong. You've learned from previous pitfalls, and you know how to mitigate against that. And I want you to imagine, week after week, feeling that it gets easier and easier. Because more and more, you're noticing that you can have fun, be social, feel relaxed, enjoy yourself without needing alcohol. Imagine 3 months go by, then 6. And just feel that this is becoming who you are. The option to drink, but finding it less and less frequent. Some people believe that scarcity creates value. That's why diamonds are more valuable than glass. I want you to get a sense that what if, by reducing how much alcohol you drink, you paradoxically increase the amount of joy, pleasure, and pride you get over the next 12 months, simply by realizing that it's an option. I want you to imagine yourself 12 months from now and compare that version to you to the version that's still dependent. Consider them characters in a computer game. One stays at the same level. The other has leveled up, has additional capabilities, features, enhancement that the dependent version of you simply doesn't have. See that version of you with increased capacity and edge. And now make a choice. This is the sliding doors moment. Step into whichever identity feels more compelling. The status quo of dependency, or the possibility of leveling up by simply being a discerning, occasional drinker. And when you've stepped into that identity, feel it change your body. Like a software update, updating all of the beliefs, thoughts, ideas, and strategies conducive and aligned with that new identity. And when the update is complete, let me know by nodding your head. That's it. And then imagine one Friday or Saturday, a few weeks from now. Imagine being in a bar, a pub, a restaurant. And imagine what happens differently now that you're aligned with this identity. Maybe you order a different drink. Maybe it loses interest. When you notice what's different in this new future, let me know by nodding your head. That's it. And now it's time to leave these timelines, feeling that you've adopted new beliefs connected to a new identity that feels more in harmony with where you are now. You're the same person you were when you were 16 years old, but you had a different identity then to the identity you have now. It's not you that changes, it's your identity. Certain things used to matter and no longer do. And as priorities shift, change, certain things you value become less important, other things become more. Feel that you are activating this new identity of being a discerning, occasional drinker. It's time to float all the way back to your present. Take a deep breath in through your nose and out through your nose. Wiggle your fingers, wiggle your toes, connect and calibrate into the here and the now. As I now count from 1 to 10 to awaken you. Starting to count. 1, 2, 3, waking up. 4, 5, 6, more alert. 7, 8, open your eyes, open your eyes. 9, 10, wide awake, wide awake, wide awake. Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of The Hypnotist. If you've enjoyed this episode or got some value from it, please give it a 5-star rating and review. And maybe you know someone that would also benefit from this particular episode, in which case share the episode with them so they can also get the benefit too. And if you would like to listen to this episode where it's just the hypnosis, so no intro, no outro, no explanation, just the hypnosis and completely ad-free, there will be a link in the description where you can subscribe at a very low cost and only get access to the hypnosis. So if that's of interest, please check that out. Thank you again for being a regular listener of The Hypnotist, and I'll see you again soon for more.